Greetings, humans of the internet, and welcome once again to Bowtie Talks. I, of course, am your excellent host, Luke Johnson, coming to you as usual from my undisclosed location, Midwest USA, with some more historical insights. And since I spent the last two episodes interviewing the official historian of one of the most beloved makers of Christmas specials, Rankin Bass Studios, I thought it would now be a good time to discuss the history of televised American Christmas specials. Because no one celebrates the holidays quite like we do here in the good old US of A. And now that December is finally upon us, I am now ready to begin talking about Christmas. Warner Brothers Studios made what could be considered the first Christmas special, but however, it was not released on television. It was an animated short called Bedtime for Sniffles. It was a Merry Melody short, the same string of animated shorts that introduced Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Porky Pig and all the other beloved Looney Tunes characters. Hanna-Barbera followed with their first Christmas-themed short called Tom and Jerry The Night Before Christmas. The plot is pretty close to most other Tom and Jerry shorts. However, it ends with the two putting their differences aside for Christmas. And in February 1952, Warner Brothers returned with a short called Gift Wrapped, which, much like the Tom and Jerry short, was a pretty standard Sylvester and Tweety movie themed around Christmas, which is odd since it was done in February. Christmas also saw the first made-for-television opera on December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1951, called Amal and the Night Visitors, which aired from the NBC Opera Theater. And it continued to be aired from 1951 to 1962, only stopping for a new version to be recorded. And operas were not the only type of live Christmas specials. Big-name stars such as Bob Hope and Bing Crosby hosted variety shows themed to the holidays. These specials, interestingly, are where many of what are now Christmas standards were first sung. And this now brings us a chance to discuss the first animated special created specifically for television. And for that, we have to flash forward a bit to 1962. Why? Because that is when the first primetime animated special, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, premiered on NBC on December the 18th, 1962. It was a 1-hour musical production, which was a rarity for television at that time. It could be said that Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol helped save, at least temporarily, the animation studio that made it. The company that made Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, as well as Mr. Magoo in general, was United Productions of America. The company had been producing Mr. Magoo since 1941 and was about to close up shop when it took on the project. And the company, needless to say, poured everything it had into this special, from casting to the production design. Jim Backus, who also played Mr. Howell on Gilligan's Island, returned to voice Mr. Magoo, and supporting voices were found in the form of Paul Frees, Maury Amsterdam, who played Buddy Sorrell on The Dick Van Dyke Show, and a few others. And the music was composed by Jules Stein with lyrics by Bob Merrill. Director Abe Levido and arranger Walter Scharf rounded up the creative team, with Scharf conducting the score. Now, the choice to adapt A Christmas Carol was, as it is perhaps one of the most adapted books in the world. But the way they approached it had a fun theatrical twist. Instead of simply turning Mr. Magoo into Ebenezer Scrooge, the story began with Mr. Magoo hurrying to a Broadway theater where he is starring in a musical version of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Scrooge's journey through Christmases of past, future, and yet to come include heart-wrenching songs such as Ringle, Ringle, Winter Was Warm, and the Lord's Bright Blessing. The order of the ghosts was changed in the special, with Christmas Present appearing before Christmas Past. However, the main story remains the same. And of course, if you listened to my previous two episodes, you would know all about Rankin Bass Productions and their massive hit, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which kicked off the stop-motion special phenomenon in 1964 when they brought Rudolph to NBC's General Electric Fantasy Hour, finding both a network and a sponsor to air their special. And interestingly, the production scored massive ratings that kept it going beyond its intended 2-year limit and taped into what was then cutting-edge technology by using a LED bulb for the very shiny nose. And this now gives me a chance to discuss what I think might be my favorite traditionally animated Christmas special of all, and that, of course, is A Charlie Brown Christmas, which happened in 1965, and this year marks the 60th anniversary. It was made by 3 men who would become friends until they died. Those men, of course, were Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts comic strip, Bill Melendez, the animator, and the producer, Lee Mendelson. Now, the Christmas special itself had its origins in a documentary that no one wanted. Lee Mendelson was a young California filmmaker when he met Charles Schulz for the first time in the early 60s while shooting footage for a television program about beloved baseball center fielder Willie Mays. Schulz himself was a recent migrant to Northern California, had been at the ballpark to celebrate a Peanuts-themed event at the Giants Candlestick Park. And after an enjoyable introduction, Mendelson had reached out to Schulz with the idea for a documentary on Peanuts that he eventually titled Boy Named Charlie Brown. The documentary depicted the daily life of Charles Schulz from the school carpool to the drawing board to the evening at home with all his children. Try as Mendelson might, he could not find a network interested in buying the program. And after a year and a half of searching, it seemed as though A Boy Named Charlie Brown was. Now, this was an era when Peanuts was really hot. It had grown into a national sensation thanks to big advertising deals with the Ford Motor Company, which was interestingly how Charles Schulz met the animator Bill Melendez. The Ford Motor Company wanted the Peanuts characters to advertise their new Ford Falcon, and Schulz wanted to meet personally with the animator, and even had Bill Melendez audition for him, and he won the deal. The Christmas special happened in 1965 when a man named John Allen, who was an advertising executive from the advertising agency of McCann Erickson, reached out to Lee Mendelson. He had known Mendelson from his many attempts at selling A Boy Named Charlie Brown. However, this time Allen wanted to talk about a new idea for Charles Schulz. Coca-Cola was in search of a television special for the holiday season, and when asked if Schulz had anything, Mendelson lied through his teeth, of course. Lee Mendelson immediately telephoned Charles Schulz and said, "I think I might have just sold a Charlie Brown Christmas." And when Schulz asked what that was, he replied, "The one you need to make an outline for tomorrow." And he hung up the phone. That weekend, Mr. Schulz, Mr. Mendelson, and Mr. Melendez typed and retyped and cut and pasted a draft of the script for Charlie Brown Christmas. And by Monday morning, it had reached Atlanta, where it received immediate approval from Coca-Cola and was soon picked up by CBS. And the executives at CBS did not hold it in very high regard. The first problem was the lack of a laugh track. Back in the 60s, it was unimaginable to produce TV comedy without one. And, interestingly, when he was first told that it would need a laugh track, Schulz replied, "I quit," and then half-jokingly, half-serious walked out. So there would be no laugh track. Schulz thought more highly of the television viewers, and he believed they didn't need to be cued to laugh at predetermined moments. And another disagreement involved voice work. CBS executives wanted to use adult actors who pretended to be kids. However, Schulz believed that using children gave the characters more authenticity. The executives were also scared of the scene in which Linus recites right from the Bible. They believed it was too long and too literal. The assumed Americans, especially children, wouldn't want to sit through a spoken passage from the King James Bible. Bill Melendez would later remark, "They were freaking out about something so overtly religious in a Christmas special, and they basically wrote it off." However, the pushback Schulz received was not only from CBS executives, it also came from within his own group. Melendez himself was hesitant. "I was leery of the religion that came into it, and I was right away opposed to it," he would later remark. However, Schulz was the beneficiary of a tight production schedule. Moreover, the network advertising agency and the show's sponsors, Coca-Cola, had already promoted the show in TV Guide, and Schulz had leverage and wasn't about to back down on key creative elements, especially the Bible verse. And the network executives finally caved and aired the special exactly as Schulz intended. However, as I said before, the executives did not hold it in particularly good regard and all thought it would fail. Television programmers were equally apprehensive. We will, of course, air it next week, but I'm afraid we won't be ordering more." And on December 9th, 1965, the half-hour special aired following Gilligan's Island. And to the surprise of the executives in New York, 50% of American television sets tuned in to see Linus recite the scene from the Bible, Charlie Brown wonder what Christmas is all about, and buy that little dinky tree. And the cartoon was a commercial and critical hit. It won Peabody and Emmy Awards, and Linus's resuscitation was hailed by critic Harriet Van Horn of the New York World Telegram, who wrote, Linus's reading of the story of the Nativity was quite simply the dramatic highlight of the season, and Coca-Cola was flooded with letters from fans of the special. One fan from Grand Rapids, Michigan, wrote, Gentlemen, I am writing the first fan letter in my 52 years of a rather full life to compliment you on sponsoring the A Charlie Brown Christmas television program. I don't know when any program has delighted as many adults as well as children, and I am writing to express the hope that you might be able to sponsor additional Charlie Brown programs. Another one from Belleverne, Pennsylvania, wrote, To the makers of Coca-Cola, we wish to compliment you on the Peanuts show you sponsored on TV. Your production stands out as refreshing as your product. Our thanks to you and Mr. Schultz for bringing to the fore, in his wholesome philosophy, the real spirit of Christmas, which is so often obliterated by a false one. It is our hope that Peanuts may find a permanent place in the TV realm. May the makers of greatly blessed for their part in this worthwhile endeavor, the Sisters of St. Francis. And one PBS executive told Lee Mendelson, well, my aunt in New Jersey didn't like it either. Just because a group of people might not like what you're doing, it does not mean that other people won't enjoy it too. CBS would follow A Charlie Brown Christmas with another classic Christmas special, and that, of course, is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, based on the book by Ted Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, which also had quite a bit of history to it as well. It was animated by Chuck Jones, the creator and mastermind, I should say, behind many of the great Looney Tunes characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and countless others. Interestingly, Dr. Seuss did not have the best relationship with Hollywood. He had written the screenplay for a 1953 movie called The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, which failed horribly at the box office. And as a result, Dr. Seuss would go through a lifelong hesitancy of having his work adapted. However, he knew Chuck Jones because they had worked together during World War II to make animated instructional shorts for the United States Army. And Chuck Jones was able to overcome Ted Geisel's hesitancy of adapting his books into media. And needless to say, quite a bit of money went into the making of the special, thanks to the voice work of Boris Karloff and the singer Thurl Ravenscroft, who also did the voice of Tony the Tiger and sang the Grinch song. The sponsor, the Foundation for Full Service Banks, provided funding that would total over $2 million in today's money, and the hearts of viewers probably did grow 3 sizes by the end, or at least feel a good bit warmer. Chuck Jones would later recall some trouble in regards to animating the special because when reading the book it only took 12 minutes. So he had to find ways to extend it, and one of the ways he did was by adding scenes with Max the dog, or as he called him, Max the reindeer dog. As a little side note, when Dr. Seuss first looked at the drawings that Chuck had done for the Grinch, he told him, that doesn't look like the Grinch, it looks like you. To which Chuck replied, well, it happens. And with that, I think I should probably end now. What have we learned today? Well, for one thing, we've learned that if something is good, it can go on forever. After all, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was made 61 years ago, and this year will mark the 60th anniversary of A Charlie Brown Christmas. And if people may doubt what you're doing, don't stop because other people might enjoy it. Just look at the 3 men who made A Charlie Brown Christmas and got the chance to laugh at CBS. And with that, goodbye, God bless, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And I would also like to thank SmartBrief.com, Remind Magazine, blog.oup.com, and Newsweek.com for the information I used to make this episode.